Alright, so I do want to let you know there is actually a video on the way, but for now, enjoy. There's a Twitter artist called Mallory, or as you probably know her better as Sweet Beans 99. Essentially, she's an art account and she makes comic strips. So she has been brought into controversy over comics she's made in the past. First one being one back in January with the New Guy comic, and the second one being recently with the one promoting stealing. If you read the comic yourself, you'd see how Sweet Beans 99 is a protagonist in the comic and is portraying herself as a good guy and the New Guy as the antagonist, as she's portraying him to be the unreasonable one and ultimately the bad guy. I'll get to the recent one as soon as possible. However, in this comic, essentially what happens is, oh yeah, I'm paraphrasing by the way, Sweet Beans talks to your coworker about how epic it is that a millionaire got robbed. I'm gonna presume it's PewDiePie because he got robbed near the time of the comic being made, which was in mid-December. And yeah, the New Guy disagrees with the protagonist's joy, and then the protagonist makes a snarky remark about how they're gonna get along. Surprise, surprise, they're not, because the antagonist doesn't agree with stealing. In my opinion, the artist in the comic just makes herself out to be an asshole. I mean, I understand there's a large community on Twitter who are associated with the whole kill the rich vibe, but in the case of PewDiePie, the one that got robbed was primarily Marzia, and the things robbed had sentimental value, which doesn't necessarily mean they're that expensive. Not to mention, the artist just makes herself out to be very unsympathetic. So in January, this comic was posted, leading to a rally hoisting up the New Guy as a beacon of omnibenevolence. This being the backlash to the first comic. You think she'd take time to reevaluate, right? No. In April, the artist made a comic about a protagonist going to an art supply shop and stealing pens because she's an artist block. I'll show the comic here. Essentially what happens in this comic, if I didn't phrase it simple enough earlier, is the protagonist is having trouble making art right now. So she decides to go to an art supply shop and steal from the store, but ultimately she still has artist block. This comic has caused a similar amount of backlash as the last comic, as there's an actual argument to be had here about the ethics of this. People on one hand arguing, stick it to the man, down with corporations, and the other side arguing, stealing's wrong, no matter who you steal from or where. I'm a bit more inclined to agree with the second side, as I think stealing inventory from a shop is only going to affect the workers at the counter or security, which is workers you want to stand up for, by the way. And I've seen people say, if you get fired from your job because people steal, it just shows how bad the employers are. And I can see that as a point, however, it doesn't justify stealing as a whole. I know I'm not really in a position to speak on this because I haven't worked in retail, however I can still give my thoughts and tell what I've learnt over my past 2 days of indulging on Twitter arguments. I could see why people steal. Like, for example, if you're stealing food if you really need it for your family, then I see the justification in stealing. However, it makes it much more of a grey area who you steal from. However, in the case of the comic, where the artist is just stealing art supplies from what looks like to be a sole trader, that's where I'd probably have more of a problem. This is a deviation from the previous point, but I've seen people argue for stealing from large chains, as it can likely afford the loss of inventory. And I know they probably can, but still it's a bad practice for people to steal, no matter who or where it's from, in my opinion anyways. Lastly, there are people on Twitter arguing that the artist is only getting hate because she's trans, and that there are shows that show murder and other illegal activities, like drugs and etc. So what makes it wrong in this comic? And I was stumped initially, as I thought this was a good counterpoint, but it isn't. Personally, I did not know the artist was trans, only finding out from the Twitter post. Secondly, I believe the reason why she's getting that much backlash is because it's anecdotal. She even confessed herself to theft whenever she was a teenager, thus making it a comic that's become a personal anecdote of sorts. And I know the comic has cats and dogs in it, and a hedgehog. However, the message of the comic is probably shared from her real life experience. However, the difference with this and let's say a movie where the main guy kills a villain is the story of that movie is likely not from real life experience. It's fiction. But Andrew, that comic is also fiction. I mean, yeah, the comic's fiction, but it doesn't detract from the fact that she based it on real life experience. Like, this is a terrible connection to make, but you know Jeff Kinney, the author behind Diary of a Wimpy Kid? Yeah, he based his books off of how he acted in real life when he was a youngster. And in the book, Greg acts like an asshole, leading Jeff Kinney to get backlash in the process. I think it's the same thing here. But to end the video off on a positive note, the artist does have nice comics. But other than that, yeah, watch my other stuff, bye.